Hey everyone, Pastor Trent here at Pleasant Point Community Church. We're back today with the weekly Sunday recap video. Please plan on sticking around until the end of the video for some announcements because we've got some events coming up soon. But I want to dive back into and look back at Psalm 40 with you guys, waiting in the mud. Man, waiting is so difficult, isn't it? Waiting for answers, waiting for a healing, waiting for a job, waiting for something to make sense, waiting for the smallest piece of evidence that God is still there and still cares. Waiting is something that we all struggle with. It's not really part of our nature. We like to have answers. We like to have solutions. We like to have and know the plan that our life is going to take. I think that's due in part to this idea that we live in this age of instant gratification. In Psalm 40, though, David uses the image of sinking into this mud and this mire, waiting for God to rescue him. And that's where the main question for Psalm 40 comes from. What will you do when you find yourself in a season of life that feels like you're sinking into the mud, waiting for God to rescue you? David starts off verse 1 by saying, I waited patiently for the Lord to help me. Now, it sort of sounds like David is sitting in the shade underneath a tree out in a field somewhere, sipping on some lemonade and kind of enjoying his day as he's patiently waiting for God. But the Hebrew has a much different tone, and I think that gets lost in translation from the Hebrew to the English. The Hebrew literally says, waiting, I waited. We would say in our time, I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited some more. There's a distinct level of struggle and despair and frustration that comes from that Hebrew language there as David is waiting for God to help him out. Essentially, David is saying, God, will you ever show up? Then the second half of verse 1 answers that call. God turned to me, David says. God heard my cry. Again, I love reading the real and raw emotions of the Psalms. Verse 2 says that he lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire, and he set my feet on solid ground. What an incredible picture, this contrast between sinking in the mud and the mire, waiting for God, and then this idea of God rescuing David and setting him on solid ground. But it even goes beyond that. God didn't just pull David out of the mud and the mire. David said, he steadied me as I walked along. Essentially, he's holding my hand. He's wrapped my arm around his shoulder. He's right by my side. He's with me. It's wonderful. What a great image there. And then in verse 3, David talks about singing a new song to God. This new song comes from the idea of having this personal experience with God where God is actively working in your life, actively picking you out of the mud and putting you on solid ground, walking by your side. And because of that, you start to sing this new song of that experience with God. And the reason we're called to sing this new song is so that many will see what God has done and be amazed and put their trust in the Lord. You see, this new song that I'm supposed to sing about my experience with God, that's my testimony that I am able to share with others so that they too can see how amazing God is. Now, I mentioned this on Sunday morning, but we meaning that the church as a whole, we don't do a very good job at sharing how God is working in our lives when we gather together. I put this out there on Sunday and I genuinely mean it. But if there's something that God is doing in your life, if he's pulling you out of the mud and you want to share that with us when we gather on Sunday morning, let me know and we will absolutely make time and an opportunity for you to do that. It's an absolute part of worship, worshiping our great God that we should be doing when we gather together, but it can also be an opportunity to encourage a fellow brother or a fellow sister in Christ who might also be living in that mud, and they need to hear your story, your new song of how God is working in your life to encourage them as well. So please reach out to me if there's something you'd like to share, and we'll make that happen. So verse 4 then starts with this idea, oh, the joy of those who trust in the Lord. Waiting and waiting and waiting is hard, yes. I think we all get that. There's no question in that. But there is joy that is found in those who wait and trust that God will show up. When life doesn't seem to make sense, when the pain in your body isn't going away, when answers to your questions aren't coming, and it feels like the mud just keeps getting deeper and deeper, that's when you need to grab a hold of God and trust that He will show up when the time is right. And it's in that time of waiting that you can absolutely find joy. And the reason that joy can be found in waiting and trusting in God is because God has always been faithful. When you're sitting there stuck in the mud and life doesn't make sense and you're confused, you're questioning everything, there is one thing in this world that you will never be able to question, and that's God's love for you. God has undoubtedly, undeniably demonstrated His love for you and me when He sent Jesus into this world to go to the cross, to take on the sins of the world and the complete wrath of God, to go to the grave, to rise again. And now He offers life and salvation and hope to anyone who believes in Him. That's the joy and the hope that you can hang on to when you find yourself in the mud and the mire of life. Because if God has done that for you, if God has gone that far for you already, then surely He'll be there for you now and as you continue on into the future. And that's the encouragement that I'm wanting to give to you today. Trust in God's faithfulness. Trust in God's goodness. Trust that God cares about you enough that He'll never leave you alone in the mud and the mire. There might be a time of waiting and waiting and waiting some more, but He's never going to forget you. There's a quote that I came across last week and I shared it on Sunday morning. It said, why is waiting such an important part of spirituality? The answer is because waiting is where faith actually becomes necessary. A God of immediate gratification requires no faith. It's in the waiting and in the silence where faith actually develops. The presence of silence never equals the absence of God. What a great quote to end on. What a great psalm. Keep hanging on, trusting God. I feel like I say this every week, but I really do enjoy going through the Psalms. Next Sunday, we're going to be looking at Psalm 27. If you're interested in reading ahead, Psalm 27, we'll be looking at that next Sunday. So now let's talk about some announcements. First of all, this upcoming Sunday is a fellowship Sunday, fellowship dinner Sunday, so please plan on sticking around for a good meal and some time of fellowship. I love our fellowship dinners together. VBS is in 2 weeks, June 28th through July 2nd. The theme is an Irish adventure through Psalm 23. We're going to be going through Psalm 23 on June 28th, that Sunday morning. That'll be our Psalm of the week, so that'll lead us right into VBS. If you haven't registered your kids or your grandkids on the website, go ahead and do so. We've had several families do that already, which is great. There is a donation list back here on the community board. So when you see that next Sunday, go ahead and check it out and consider helping out where you can. If you can make one of the specific meals or bring some ingredients, that's great. Give those to Jessica or Karen. If not, if you say, I just don't have the time and you just want to give them some cash, that'll work too. And we'll go to the store and figure it out that way as well. Those two have been doing a great job at organizing VBS. I want to say thank you to them as well. Also, please be continuing to pray for the kids who will be attending that week, that they can hear the message of the Good Shepherd that they can trust in. It's going to be such a good time and a great lesson for them to learn as well. And as always, I'll say it again, we need volunteers. So if you have if you have 1 or 2 days that week of VBS where you can come and help out, please do so. And we'll have a great time doing that and serving God together. I'd also like to again invite you to the Connect Conference at the end of July. This is that yearly Berean Fellowship Family Reunion Conference. It's open to anyone and everyone who's a part of the fellowship, not just the pastors and their families, but everybody. We're all a giant family. This year it's going to be at Maranatha Bible Camp down there by North Platte, the Maxwell area. So even if it's just for a day or maybe that Sunday night event, please come down and we'd love to see you there too. I also want to remind the ladies about the Faithful Hands, Willing Hearts retreat that is happening in September 18th through the 19th this fall. Yeah, that seems like a way out there, but if anything I've learned about summer so far this year, time's going by really fast. So there's a flyer on the community board. There's a link on our website. If you want to go to our website in the events tab, there's more information there. So ladies, I'm going to be praying that you consider registering for this event in the fall. It's going to be so worth it, and I really hope you consider going to that. If you have made it to this point in the video, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that share button too, so that other people can get the announcements. I'm excited to continue to see what God is doing in our community, the amazing things that He's doing in our lives. I'm going to encourage you today to hang on to God. Trust God to be faithful because He's proven it over and over and over again. I'll be praying for all of you this week. Have a great week serving God, and I can't wait until we get to gather together again. Grace and peace.